Hi Kwame, I just want to go over this unit summative for Unit 2 for you. This is something that obviously would be better to do if we were face-to-face because it's a series of paragraphs task and sometimes this can be a little bit stressful for students. So before we get started, what I want to remind you of is that the best thing to do whenever you're approaching a task and a subject that you struggle with is try not to overthink it. Give yourself lots of breaks and remind yourself that you can do it. You just need to put your mind to it and stay positive throughout the process and ask for help when you need it, okay? So I'm in Unit 2 under the unit summative. I have released this for you already. So before we get started, the first thing it asks you to do is to revisit a series of paragraphs. And you might recall that when we did the unit review, you had to read through some series of paragraphs assignments that were examples from the Ontario Literacy Test long answer questions, and we went over the basics of a series of paragraph, and then you had to analyze a series of paragraph and underline the certain components of it. So before we get started, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go back to that lesson and we're going to take a look, okay? I'm going to go to content. And we're going to find this in our review unit because it was at the very beginning of the course. I'm scrolling down and I'm looking at reviewing a series of paragraphs, okay? So you can click on the overview here, just lets you know that this lesson is something where you're going to be going over writing in full sentences and paragraph writing. So, what is a series of paragraphs? When writing a series of paragraphs, it's recommended that you follow the essay format. The two are very similar because you're forming an opinion and providing evidence and support to prove it, but they're also very different. So these items right here are the main ways that an essay and a series of paragraphs are different. Essays are usually more academic in nature. They are usually always 5 paragraphs and then more paragraphs. So 5 paragraphs is really the minimum you're looking at for an essay because you always have an introductory paragraph, 3 body paragraphs, a conclusion. And sometimes you might have 4, 5, 6 body paragraphs depending on what you're writing. The difference is that a series of paragraphs can be written in 3 to 5. So you can still have 5 paragraphs, but that's really the most you're going to be writing. And a 3-paragraph series of three paragraphs for a series of paragraph is also acceptable. So essays depend very heavily on research, facts, statistics, and series of paragraphs. Although you can still use research and statistics because it's helpful, you can also use your personal experience and education and things like that. So it's more opinion-based and not meant to be so academic and factual-based. All research and essays has to be cited, so because you are going to, like, if you write an essay, you're looking up books and articles written by people who are experts in the field, so you need to give them credit for their information. Whereas in a series of paragraphs, some of what you're writing is based on your own experience and your own opinions, and as long as they make sense and they're connected to your points, it's okay to use those. And I mean, you're not going to really cite yourself, right? So you don't need to use any sort of citing for that. The last thing is that academic essays are usually not written in the first person. So your series of paragraphs is more opinion-based, so you're going to be able to use words like I and think, like I think this and this and this, whereas when you're writing an essay, you can't really do that. Okay? Just a brief overview. I know you went over this at the beginning, but it was a long time ago, so feel free to come back and look at this lesson after this video as well. So the next part of this lesson was when you actually had to look through some examples from the Ontario Literacy Ontario Literacy course, long answer samples. So right here is the link for the exemplars, so you can open them in a new tab. And it says that you should be looking at the long answer questions that have a code 60. Code 60 is the highest level you can get on these long answer questions. I will scroll right down to where the code 60 is so I can give you an idea of what you're looking for, and I think the page number, I believe it's page 9 if I remember correctly because I printed it for you. Yes, okay, so code 50 is page 8, so page 9 would be code 60. So this is whenever you're trying to do an assignment, you always kind of want to aim to be the best that you can be. So this is the absolute best example of a long answer question on the OSSLT which is a series of paragraphs. And you will notice, this being a level 4, that there are 5 paragraphs in here. So I would say you should take a look and read this over just to refresh your memory. I know you have read this particular series of paragraphs because I don't know if you remember, but remember you had to underline what the argument was and where the evidence was and where the conclusion sentences were and things like that, okay? So I'm just going to show you a quick difference. If you scroll up and you look at, let's say, a code 40, which is still a decent mark, it's still a pass, but it's definitely not a level 4. This person wrote 4 paragraphs. So it doesn't have to be 5 paragraphs, like I said. They kind of have a little bit of information in their first paragraph. Mention what their 3 ideas are. So whatever your arguments are going to be, you always want to mention them in the first paragraph, and then you expand on it in the paragraphs that come next. And in their last paragraph, they cover their 3rd point, and they also just sort of sum up the series of paragraphs as a whole. When you scroll down to code 60, they've done something similar, but it's a little bit different. So the first paragraph just talks about, so the topic that they're talking about in this essay is obviously about homework and whether or not that's important for students. It's probably something like, should students have to do homework in school? So this person has given a little bit of information just on what homework is and just sort of how students feel about it because they don't like hearing the word homework. But then it gives 3 key points on why they think it's important. So they're saying students get to practice, it gives them something to do, so they're not home like bored, idle hands sort of thing, and it strengthens a child's mind. And then what they do is they spend each paragraph explaining one of these points. So practice is in the first paragraph, giving the students something to do is in the second paragraph, and practice and strengthening a child's mind is in the 3rd paragraph. They've also used things like 85%, that's sort of statistics and facts, so that goes a little bit above and beyond as well. Like I said, you don't have to have facts throughout your entire series of paragraphs, but throwing a couple in there, here or there, where it's applicable is definitely always helpful and makes your point sound more credible. Okay, and then at the end, they have written a conclusion that sums up all their points, talking about their 3 main ideas again, and just summarizing what they've said. Okay, so you can go back and take a look at those. The link for these are also in the lesson for the summative for Unit 2. I just thought I would come back here because we were going through the whole lesson as a whole. So as you recall, maybe, I'm not sure, but when you did this assignment, you had to highlight the different parts of the paragraph, okay? So just as a reminder, because I'm pretty sure you gave some pretty good advice. One of the things you had to do here was handwrite 4 tips you would give someone before writing the OSSLT. Now, you're not writing the OSSLT right now. Doing tasks like this in an English course are meant to help prepare you, but you are writing a series of paragraph-long answer style question sort of assignment, so these tips might be helpful for you as well. So let's go back and take a look and see what you wrote for students so that maybe we can take a little bit of our own advice before we tackle this assignment. So I'm going to go into your assignment here. Series of paragraph. Let's see if it's in the first one. Oh, perfect. It's on the first picture. Okay, so you have said to students, take your time, check spelling and punctuation, always want to do that, make sense, that's good advice, and don't overthink. And this is, I think, my favorite piece of advice because I know that sometimes when I'm doing something that I struggle with, sometimes I just get it all worked up in my head and I can't really tackle it because I get too overwhelmed. So by taking a step back and some deep breaths and sort of relaxing and letting it go a bit, you might be able to get a little bit more progress done. Okay, so let's take our own advice when we go to tackle this assignment. Sound good? Okay, so I'm going to go back to our screen here and we're going to go back to Unit 2, the summative assignment, and we're just going to take a look. Okay, unit summative, here we are. So, For this assignment, you'll be revisiting a series of paragraphs. We've done this. It's a good time to go back to the review unit and check it over, and then once we're done, we can continue. So we've done that. Again, after this video, you can go back and review it in more detail if you'd like, but otherwise we can get started. So just a brief idea, the writing process is in these 4 steps. So you always want to start with brainstorming first, which means once you identify a topic, you kind of want to think of some ideas of what your opinions are on that topic and what you're thinking about it. The next step is going to be the selection of the argument. So basically, what are you trying to say about this topic? What is the point that you're trying to make, and what are you trying to convince people of? Remember, you're expressing an opinion. Researching, so this is finding evidence and stuff to support your issues. Like I said, it doesn't all have to be like factual evidence by experts, but a little bit of that can help. And then the last part is the pre-writing, which is putting it all together. Okay, so for brainstorming, below, once we finish all these steps in this overview where it says the assignment information, there is a topic given to you. If you don't want to do that topic because it's just, I don't know, so uninteresting to you that you feel like you can't possibly write anything about it, you can feel free to choose your own topic, but maybe just run it by me first, okay? So, as an example, the first thing I've said, so when you brainstorm some ideas you have around the topic, what I always recommend for students is try to form a question about your topic that can have a clear yes or no answer. So, for example, if your topic is going to be pit bulls, I chose this as an example because I know you like dogs, then a yes or no question could be, should pit bulls be banned? So, when you finish writing your question, you make a little T-chart and you put yes in one column, no in the other, and then you try to think of at least 3 reasons for each. You can think of more than 3 reasons because then afterwards you can select the best 3 from your list and use those to form your arguments. But at the very least you should have 3, okay? Once you have done this first step, the brainstorming and the ideas based around your topic, you're ready to start forming what your actual argument is going to be. So even though you might, depending on the topic, fall more on one side or the other, what I recommend sometimes is that even if you feel strongly about one side of the argument, if you notice that the other side is something you can argue really well just because there was more facts and information for it, it might be better to do for an assignment just because it's easier to argue. It doesn't mean that you have to, just sometimes a good strategy to use in school, especially when you're doing assignments that you don't really want to do to begin with, right? Okay, so once you have done that, you need to find the proof to back up your reasons, right? So let's say your question is, should pit bulls be banned? And you've made your T-chart and you're saying, yes, I think pit bulls should be banned. Then you need to make a statement as your argument to sum that up. So basically your argument would be, I think that pit bulls should be banned in Canada, or I think that pit bulls should be banned as house pets, or whatever it is you're trying to say. And then you have your 3 reasons. Because this, this, and this. I don't want to give you the reasons because I think this is a topic that might interest you, and I want you to, be able to think of reasons on your own, and if I give you reasons in here, then you won't be able to use them. But if you need help clarifying this next step because I didn't want to give you an example with this topic, then just let me know. Dun, 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 dun. The next step, once you have those reasons and you've made your statement, whether or not, for instance, you think pit bulls should be banned or not, then you just need to find some proof, right? So let's say you're saying that pit bulls should be banned, and your argument is going to be, one of your arguments is going to be that they're aggressive animals because they're bred to be aggressive in dog fights. Then you can use that as one of your reasons, and then maybe provide some examples. You can look for a case study, you could look for a statistic that shows people who have been injured by that specific breed of dog. There's a lot of different things you can find to back up your ideas. It is just going to take a little bit of time, okay? You would do that for each of your reasons, and each one of these reasons would be forming its own paragraph. So you would start your paragraph with, I think they should be banned because they are aggressive animals and have been bred to be aggressive. It's in their nature. And then you give your proof for why you think that's true. And then you write your concluding sentence. And then you move on to your next paragraph, which talks about your next reason for why you think they should be banned. Step 4 is putting it all together. So